Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. Let's talk about turning toxic workplace lemons into sweet, sweet lemonade. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Bank managers took credit for my hard work, so I quit and took their careers down with me. Years ago, I got my first full-time job working as a bank teller. It was a job that, for the most part, I enjoyed, especially since it was in a low-income area with a lot of immigrants, which meant I got to meet lots of really kind and interesting people. I wanted to spend more time working here, but the management was just not great. Both our manager and assistant manager were females. That in itself is not a bad thing at all. I've since then had multiple female managers that I consider to be some of the greatest leaders I've worked with. What was an issue, however, was the massive stick up their butts. There were 3 tellers working there, myself and 2 other women. I'm the only male. Months into working here, I started to realize that there was a serious case of favoritism towards my female coworkers. They would get extra days off, paid, mind you, longer breaks. They got away with mistakes that would get most tellers fired, losing money, misplacing deposits in another person's accounts, etc., and in general, just stuff I couldn't ever get away with. When it came to me, I was the pack horse. I was not given any slack when it came to making mistakes, and I was always expected to pick up tasks that the other tellers weren't willing to do. Emptying the coin machine, reordering supplies, opening and closing the branch, processing international currency exchanges, dealing with the tough clients. You get the picture. I brought this up to my management, and they simply told me, "They're doing their part. Why are you complaining about doing your own? Can't a man handle this?" Cue the malicious compliance. I decided to do what they had least expected, become the best damn teller they'd ever had. I started to maintain all the branch's marketing materials so it looked much more professional. I developed our own means of promoting our lending products and became the highest producing loan officer in the company for 3 months in a row. I picked up other tasks that were being neglected in the branch and nobody else knew how to process. I even took multiple trainings offered by the company to be able to process more complex products, such that account holders from other branches started to come to me at my branch to do business. It was an exciting time, but hellishly busy. My management, on the other hand, was super happy to take credit for all of my labor, communicating to upper management that they had pushed our branch to reach their own lofty goals and had trained us for such. That was the straw that broke this camel's back. I shopped around and found a part-time position at a marketing firm across town. It was intriguing to me, and despite being part-time, would pay better than what I was currently being paid. I forgot to mention I was paid much less than the other 2 tellers who only started working a couple of months before me. I interviewed and got the job. I went to my manager and told her that I was quitting, that I'd had enough of them taking credit for my work, and that their sexism was belittling and was hurting the entire team. She couldn't believe what I was saying, but dismissed it and simply said, "Well, fine then, we're done here. Leave your keys with my assistant." Before dropping off my keys, I dropped an email to our area VP, cluing her in on the sexism and dishonest practices in the branch. 2 weeks later, I received a call from this very manager begging me to come back to train the team on the many different tasks they left me to learn and take care of. I told her sweetly, "I'm sorry, but I'm terribly busy with my new job. I'm sure Teller X and Z can take care of it all for you. You've never doubted them before," and hung up. I heard another week later from a teller I'd worked with at another branch that the area VP had run an investigation into this branch. Their numbers had plummeted after I left, and it was discovered that the manager was not meeting her own lending quotas, and the assistant manager had been removing all fees from all the customers' accounts and transactions in order to attract them to her to get more business. They were both fired, and I was free. So if you hate your job, people in management, and you can find a new one, here's what you do. Become the MVP by taking over everything, being the best worker ever. Like, go out of your way a whole bunch, then find another job. One of 2 things will happen. First, you could be treated better. Second, you could drop them like a hot pocket and watch them burn. And our second story. You told me I don't work for the company, so I guess I won't help you. I work for an insurance agency, not going to mention who, handling day-to-day customer service. I call a customer, call him clown because his homeowner's insurance was past due. He proceeds to give me attitude because he moved out of state and sold that home 4 months prior. He also has a personal umbrella policy for my state that he never got transferred over to his new state. Because I'm only licensed in one state, I told him I cannot transfer his policy over and he needs to call the agency in his new state. Clown then decides to say, I wish I could talk to someone that actually works for company name. I told him I do in fact work directly for the company, to which he replied, but you don't work for them, do you? Or else you'd be able to handle this. I explained to him and his 3 brain cells that agents can only ever do business in their licensed states, and for him to call his new office and sort out the issue with the umbrella policy. After I get him off the phone, I proceed to cancel his home policy because it's in a state that I am licensed for. We're allowed to request from underwriting to cancel past 30 days, but it affects our agency's performance rating. Don't ask me why. When it's the customer's fault, we have to backdate that far. So I cancel his policy back only 30 days, despite the fact he sold the home 4 months prior. Because F him. He calls back a couple weeks later. He found out we didn't cancel the policy back the whole 4 months and demands he's refunded for that time. I cut him off and say, you told me I don't work for company name. Why would you call me for help? He got even more PO'd, going off on me while I sat back and smiled. Once this guy finally stopped to take a breath, I chimed in, this sounds like a company name problem, so maybe you should call them. And I hung up. He never called back, so I assumed he called our corporate number. Moral of the story, don't treat customer service like crap and accuse them of not working for their company, then try to beg them for help. Edit. I was staying within company guidelines by not going back the whole 4 months. If it's customer fault, we technically aren't required to backdate at all. So I did this fella a favor. You let the customer F himself over after trying to help him? That's malicious compliance in my opinion. Anytime people refuse to listen to the helper and then try to blame someone else for the problem they created, that's malicious compliance. Good job. And our last story. Neighbors tried to steal our land. We've owned just under 3 acres of land in Georgia for years. For a long time, it was peaceful. Then about 5 years ago, a new set of neighbors moved in next door. At first, things seemed fine. They occasionally parked over on our side, but it wasn't a huge deal. Then they put up an above-ground pool almost directly on the property line, and my mom, the official property owner, felt uneasy but decided to let it slide. Big mistake. Over time, they started taking more and more land, bit by bit, inch by inch. It started when they began mowing our grass, carving out a fake property line much deeper into our lot than the actual one. At first, we assumed they just didn't want taller grass near their yard, and we let it go. Then came the real construction. One day, we noticed they had cleared out trees, graveled over part of our land to extend their driveway, and were literally setting up a farm on our property. Chickens, cows, fencing, the works. Keep in mind, their property's only about an acre, according to the local tax assessor's website. They were basically doubling their land by stealing ours. That was when my mom finally confronted them. She walked next door and politely explained that while she didn't mind them using the space, they should have asked first and couldn't build anything permanent since she had plans to fence off the property. They lost their minds. Instead of apologizing or even pretending to be reasonable, they started talking down to her, acting like she was crazy for asking them to stop taking her land. Their reasoning? You're not using it. That was the last straw. We immediately hired a surveyor to mark the real property lines, and that's when we realized they'd stolen even more land than we originally thought. On top of that, they'd been dumping trash behind one of our old barns, completely hidden from view until we walked the property line with the survey team. The surveyors tried to do their job, but our neighbors harassed them the entire time. Then, the second they left, the neighbors ripped out all the property markers and moved them to where they wanted the property line to be. They did this every single day. We'd put the markers back, and within hours, they'd move them again. so we got a lawyer. Our attorney told us to send a formal cease and desist letter, a certified notice giving them 7 days to remove their trash, clear their belongings, and stop using our land. If they didn't, we could take legal action, seize their stuff, and sue them for damages. They refused to even accept the letter. The mail carrier attempted delivery multiple times, but the neighbors refused to sign for it. Meanwhile, their behavior got worse. They started hiding the official metal rebar property markers, burying them in sawdust and tree debris to make it harder for us to prove. They started hiding the official metal rebar property markers, burying them in sawdust and tree debris to make it harder for us to prove where the land actually ended. We also noticed they were sneaking around our property whenever they thought no one was home. One day, my mom took my car so it looked like the house was empty. That's when I caught them wandering through our yard, walking around our barns, and even stepping onto the back porch. The second they saw me, they ran back to their house, laughing, claiming they were just looking for a lost chicken. We started installing security cameras immediately. Then we discovered something insane. Our neighbors weren't even the real property owners. They were renters. They didn't even own the land they were clearing, fencing off, and using as their personal farm. So we tracked down the actual owner, a landlord who owns multiple properties in the area, and told him everything. We showed him the property survey, the legal notice, the damages, and the security footage. The landlord was furious. He evicted them immediately, and we sued for damages. We won. Now, not only were they kicked out, but they also had to pay for every single tree they cut down, every piece of gravel they dumped, and the legal fees we incurred to deal with their nonsense. It took 5 years of their slow, creeping land theft, but in the end, they lost everything. The audacity of these people is unreal. They weren't just entitled, they went full colonial mode on your land. Mowed a little past the line? Fine. Dump some gravel? Annoying, but whatever. But a whole farm with livestock? That takes next level delusion. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.